are about to know the thrill of seeing that which has never been seen before. You are about to enter a beautiful, exciting, wonderful new world, the world of 1960.
In the 1960s, California's powerful economy is larger than that of most countries. Driven by the arms race with the Soviet Union, the unionized aerospace industry ensures that every American astronaut rides into space in California-made rockets. The tax base from a strong economy supports a growing public sector, including what some call the best school system in the world. From kindergarten through graduate studies, Californians enjoy a free, high-quality education.
We had support of the parents in the community for schooling, and the students came to school expecting, number one, that they were going to get a good education, and we tried, frankly, to live up to those expectations.
The people who deliver that education have a problem. When Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the National Labor Relations Act in 1935, public sector workers, along with farm workers, were left outside its protections.
Collective bargaining is a method, and all the unions around us had won that in the 30s. And here we were in the 60s without that power to bargain.
The bias against public employee unions went back to 1919 when Calvin Coolidge, governor of Massachusetts, broke a policeman's strike. He wrote a famous letter to AFL President Sam Gompers. There is no right to strike against the public safety by anybody, anywhere, anytime.
I remember the arguments. I mean, would the police go off on strike? Would the firemen go off on strike? How could teachers possibly betray their children?
Unions for teachers were seen as unpatriotic, or at least unprofessional, even to many teachers. Not that teachers made anything like the salary of a real professional, or for that matter, a skilled craftsman.
You couldn't convince a nurse or a teacher that she should get less than a carpenter. But the carpenter had this powerful collective bargaining tool. He was recognized, he had a contract.
Also, unlike professionals such as doctors or lawyers, teachers and other public employees had little control over their work lives.
I found out that they had given me 5 classes of driver education. What? Excuse me? This is how you decided in those days. You don't like somebody, you give them a bad program. And by the way, I didn't drive. That was what was kind of funny about that one.
I was standing in the faculty cafeteria for lunch. I was all dressed up, except I had a pair of flats on with a closed toe and no back. Something we wear all the time today. The girls' vice principal, that's what they were called in those days, girls' vice principal came to me, stopped me in the line, and told me that my shoes were unprofessional. I was not to wear them again.
We used to have sessions at the Board of Supervisors, at which time the members of the board scarcely paid attention to us. They scratched themselves in intimate places. They sent out for coffee. They were eating while we were sitting in the audience. They had a disgraceful, unappreciative attitude towards the workers.
Bottom line was that we did not have contractual rights, that we did not have collective bargaining, that we didn't control our jobs, our profession. We had nothing to say about it.
By the 1960s, attitudes begin to change under the impact of a growing civil rights movement and the end of the McCarthy era.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
Perhaps what was being fomented in the broader society were these bigger issues, the war, the civil rights, the farm workers, whatever you wanted to call it. Therefore, there was a sense of righting wrongs. It wasn't hard to apply that to your own working conditions, your own union.
The teachers were certainly in the front of the line, demanding public the right of public employees to bargain collectively, and we were right there with them.
In New York, the American Federation of Teachers leads a strike and gains a collective bargaining law and a strong contract. Inspired, California teachers begin to join the AFT too, although they could be fired just for belonging to a union.
And we had tiny little unions. We had 10 people, 5, 15. And our message was always the same. We're here to start a union. And starting a union means that you're going to do it yourself.
And I think people were scared. I was the AFT rep at North Hollywood High School, and I did not even know, or would I ask because it was too scary, who the members were.
As Pasadena high school teacher Raoul Tilley recalls,
It was like joining the French underground in Paris in 1943. We had more secret members than we had public members.
Tilley, elected president of the California Federation of Teachers in 1968, gives voice to the feelings of thousands of teachers as collective bargaining comes to symbolize the dream for dignity in their workplace.
In the classroom, we're worried about class size, teacher-pupil ratio, supportive auxiliary services within the classroom, an honest mechanism to assess students' needs and find out what they are and what's needed.
We were trying to build conditions for teaching to happen and learning to happen. And we saw it as a social obligation for this to happen. Eventually, we realized it involved a lot of social issues. And that meant racism, it meant economics within society at large, it meant the peace movement, a lot of things that were converging on the lives of young people.
For us in California, of course, the big movement was the farm workers movement. And that meant that, we would send pickets down wherever there was a march. The teachers were always present.
The situation in California lent itself to a struggle on collective bargaining. We had elected officials who were sympathetic. It was a matter of the right time, being ripe for it, and not all of the public workers were going for it.
I just remember the feeling of suddenly being in front of these thousands and thousands of colleagues, all converging, and you're trying to convince them when they're feeling good, they're just out of vacation, right, and they're going back to school, handing them this leaflet and saying, let's go, we're going to have a meeting about such and such. And it was, there's a certain amount of trepidation in doing that. It takes, frankly, some guts to stand up and try to get someone to take a leaflet and convince them that this is a thing to do and not feel rejected because they throw it on the floor or they don't take it.
Strikes of teachers are illegal. It jeopardizes the safety and welfare and health of children.
That act had in it an odd uneasiness that as a teacher that you would do that, right? You didn't accidentally end up standing there with a sign. You had to purposely decide to do it. And once you decide that one time, after that, when you're called on, you can do it again.
Although administrators and politicians claim public employee strikes are officially illegal, dozens occur anyway.
The teachers were engaging in strikes and they had no laws to deal with it, and nobody knew what to do except put them in jail or try to fire them or something. And all of these solutions just were, frankly, not very satisfying to anybody.
By the late 60s and early 70s, teachers and other public sector unionists built an unstoppable momentum in California and across the country.
We acted as though we had the power, and we did, in a sense, bargain collectively. We went before the Board of Supervisors. We had sick outs at the hospitals where the usual happened, where the workers who did not immediately affect the health of the patients were out. And we acted as though there was a collective bargaining law, and we made it happen.
1,300 sanitation workers are on strike, and Memphis is not being fair to them.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s involvement in a sanitation workers' strike in Memphis, Tennessee, highlights the deep connection between the civil rights movement and public sector unionism. His tragic death during that strike forces authorities to grant the workers union recognition. It also provides a renewed spark for organizing elsewhere.
The public workers really put on a fight at the level of the state legislature. And that means that the teachers and the service employees, AFSCME, that was the group that really put it on.
Keeping up steady pressure, one public worker group after another is granted collective bargaining rights. By 1975, Governor Jerry Brown signs the Educational Employee Relations Act, legalizing collective bargaining for teachers and other school employees.
We didn't pin our existence on a law. We were in existence before the law. We acted as if we could bargain before there was a bargaining law. And so it's a collective action that's behind it, fundamentally. Now, this doesn't deny the fact that Jerry Brown's approval of collective bargaining for farm workers, teachers, and so forth was a very, very helpful and necessary thing for us. And thank goodness it happened.